Hello. So, just a disclaimer. Um, I fasted for 2 weeks and I came at it from a religious perspective. But even if you don't share those beliefs, I do think that you can get something out of this. So, I remember the first time I did something like fasting, I tried giving up carbohydrates for Lent. And I think I made it 2 weeks into it before I accidentally ate pancakes and like, oh shoot, I broke it. And then on and off the next couple of years, I think I tried it out a little bit and maybe I would make it through the middle of the day, and sometimes I would make it all the way up until evening before I would just be like, I'd go fantastic Mr. Fox on something from Taco Bell, and it was just like, dang it, like I screwed up, I didn't do it. But yeah, and then it was last year, I think the last week of July, we were about to go on a mission trip, and my pastor said something like, a church that doesn't fast is bound to die, and at least that's what the translator said on the headset. I go to a Korean church, so maybe some liberties were taken, or I guess the point he was trying to make was fasting is important. So between that moment and the present, I fasted a couple times. The first time had a meal that I had a meal on a Sunday, and then that was my last meal until a Thursday night. So 4, 5 days, and that was my record. And then on and off, I tried fasting. Well, the reason I would fast would be for prayer requests. Not that I think I'm twisting God's arm, but usually when I would fast for one, it'd get answered. I'm like, oh wow. But anyway, so the goal was to try to fast for a week, and I was like, if it gets answered, then I'll break the fast before the week is up. And I felt cool with that. And they kept getting broken, but now they kept getting answered like before the 7 days were up. I'm like, woohoo, I get to eat something. And then there was a time where I tried to come up, I thought I'm going to fast, but I didn't have a reason why, so I tried making one up, and I lasted a day. I think that's one thing that applicable to the religious and the non-religious. For a fast to work, you've got to have a reason. And then, let's see, skip to maybe the end of December, maybe the beginning of, no, skip to the end of November, maybe the beginning of December. And I'm thinking, I want my life to change in 2020. And you know, that's a vague, abstract thing. So I'm like, okay, normally my goal is 7 days, but I want to show I'm serious, and so I decided 2 weeks. And felt like a tall order. I wondered if it was even safe. And the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, you know what? Why not? Have a go at it. I felt like God had my back. So anyway, I'm approaching it and I'm like, okay, this is gonna happen. I'm like, 2 weeks. So one of the things that I did, I'm not a nutritionist or anything. I eat pretty bad. But one of the things that I did was, a lot of people in my church are doctors and nurses, and there's no shortage of consultation. And although a lot of them were concerned, they said, make sure to drink plenty of electrolytes. And one person said, well, I think he missed the fact that I was doing like a full fast, not an intermittent fast. And he said, eat some oranges. So if you're going to go the intermittent route, I guess that's something to keep in mind. So, let's see. So anyway, one of the things I did was I tried not to eat greasy meat. And I kind of went vegan. I don't know if it's the right thing. I ate at this vegan restaurant and had plant-based burgers that taste like meat. And so that kind of helped settle my stomach and get used to like, okay, you're not going to get the juices from meat and cheese. So that kind of got me ready. So I think one of the advantages of having sort of done this before was that it wasn't uncharted territory completely. I'm like, okay, you know that you can at least get to 4 days. You've done that before. And you know what it's like to fight past your stomach. And my rules for fasting were, it wasn't going to be intermittent. It was going to be full, no solid foods. Now, one of the gray areas for me was smoothies, or because you could argue it's a liquid, but some people feel like, oh, it's a solid sort of. So I just strayed away from that. And I ate vitamin gummies once, but because it's more like kind of a pill or whatever, I was like, I didn't count it. Next thing, I would allow myself to drink juice, maybe some sodas just to get some sugar, and hot cocoa. And I like to take pre-workout, so I would put that in and mix it up in water, and that would give me a buzz, some energy. And so those were kind of my rules, what I was going to do. So I remember December 31st, 2019. It was 8 o'clock, and I had my second veggie burger and some vegan chicken tenders. And I was like, okay, this is for real. That was the last meal. I was like, oh, shoot. So I'm like, well, here we go. And I had till midnight to officially start. I gave myself some leeway, like, okay, in between now and then you can eat stuff, but midnight, nope. So midnight happens. I'm like, okay, this is for real. Now, because I've done this before, I think it was day 3 where I was like, ugh. And then day 4 was fine. And then day 5, I was kind of lightheaded. I felt like maybe I couldn't focus. I probably wouldn't have felt that way if I had more electrolytes. But it was manageable, and I had the day off anyway. Oh yeah, one thing is I didn't have time off. I worked full time, even overtime. So, what else? Oh, I think it was day 5 where my body was like, oh shoot, he's not joking. You're going to go to the bathroom a lot, and day 5 was when I kind of started to get the runs bad. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. And then, oddly enough, day 7, I began to feel really happy. There would be about maybe 90 minutes in the day where I felt a bit, ugh. But for the most part, I was in a really good mood. I felt really focused. And yeah. it would just be 90 minutes where I wasn't sure if everything was going to be cool. Sometimes it would be two 90-minute intervals, but they were spread throughout the day. And if I was like really stressed and tense, that's when I get a hot cocoa. I should say that sometimes it did feel a bit difficult to calm down and go to bed because you're a bit on edge. So get something to help you relax, like a hot cup of tea. Let's see what else. Um, can't stress this enough. Drink plenty of electrolytes throughout. Don't wait a couple days into it to be like, okay, I've got to do this. Because I had a friend who was also fasting towards the end of mine, and he said that helped immensely when I told him about it. And let's see. I think there were moments where I kept thinking, okay, I'm not going to make it. But they varied. I feel like day 10, I had a moment of weakness where I thought, I might die or something. I didn't actually think that, but I was just, everything was heightened. And it was the night before the 14th day where I was like, ugh. And the thing that made me worried was it felt like my stomach was a bit big. Now, my stomach had gotten flatter. I don't know what that's about. But yeah, that gave me cause for concern. But anyway, two things that were I was concerned about possibly having hallucinations, which I heard that is a possibility. And my rules for breaking it were if I throw up, see something, or faint, 3 reasons, then I would quit. And later on, I found out from a friend of mine, David, if any of those things happened, you're already in trouble. So I should have changed my criteria, but by then I was so deep into it. So anyway, yeah, I made it. Day 14. I was going to wait the next day, but I had the idea. A friend of mine who I wanted to see the next day, I was going to see him, so we video chatted, and I broke my fast then. And I didn't feel it immediately. I felt fine actually, felt really good. So, oh yeah, maybe don't work out because I heard that just like your body's already in overdrive, and yeah, that just puts even more pressure on it. I mean, I was at work and everything, but anyway, it's totally doable. I'm not a doctor or anything, and all my doctor friends told me to be super careful. But you know, one of the cool things was the headaches and stuff are like the brain going like, "Argh." That kind of went away on day 5, and I just felt intensely focused and clear, and stuff didn't distract me or upset me as much. And a consequence afterwards is I'm really good at saying no to impulse buys. Like if I drive by like a burger place, I'm like, I don't need that. And if I think about it, I'll be like, okay, for that price of that, I could buy this amount of food at home and it would last me a week. So that's an advantage. And you don't try to combat boredom with food. That's another thing. And recently this week, I've tried working out in the morning. I wake up really early, and normally I would go back to bed after an hour or two. But this past couple days, I've stayed up and I try to do stuff. So, yeah, I really recommend fasting, and you don't have to do 2 weeks. And it can be intermittent, but for me, fasting, just no solid foods, that helped out a lot. And like I said, coming from a religious perspective, I had like support of church members and stuff and people to pray for me. But for those of you who don't adhere to it, just have a good group of friends and people who you can let know, hey, I'm doing this, and somebody to watch your back. So I think it'll be really helpful if you do that. Again, not a doctor, but it really helps to go against the grain of like the whole thing in society where like rah 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 rah. I know. So that's my story on fasting.